Hi everybody and welcome to a slightly more security focused video on Prisma Access managed by SCM, Strata Cloud Manager. I want to do a few more of these, really getting to the bottom of how we can secure the networks as opposed to just being able to, it does this functionality, so that's what we're going to do. Please hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps the channel. It's starting to build some momentum now, which I'm very happy about and slightly surprised because when I started this, I didn't really think anybody was ever going to want to listen to me at all. But it seems that some people are finding what I'm putting out useful, so that's good to know. Okay, so what we're going to concentrate on today, as the name of the video suggests, is the moment you put any kind of portal or web service or anything like that on the net, it's usually about 2 or 3 hours, if that, before it seems every bot in the world seems to know that it exists. Okay, and that's no different for Prisma Access and the Globalprotect portal. So what we're going to look at today is, admittedly, the Palo Alto recommended way of dealing with this, and how that's configured. Okay, one of the ways they recommend to deal with it is for certificate authentication. Let's just familiarize ourselves with the problem first, though. So we go through to log viewer, okay, and then we're going to go through to our Globalprotect logs, which are there. And then we're going to load up here, so you can save a filter. So if you create a filter in here, you can save it there, and you can put a name in so you can recall it later. So what we're going to do is we're going to just go for my saved, which of course brute force demo. I've already done this before. And basically that filter is going to be Globalprotect portal, failure, and endpoint OS type browser. It's very important that we look at the browser as the OS type. Bots are not going to come from Globalprotect clients, and in fact, actually, what we see with the browser type logon is we see that there's all zeros in the Globalprotect client version, and then we see the endpoint OS type as browser. Now, here we have the random names that are being used to log in with. Including one, there was one here briefly, which is really badly spelt, which is actually a bit too close for comfort to my name. And then we have the auth method certificate. So in this particular instance, and I'll show you this first. So we have client cert not present. And the reason we have client cert not present is because one of the ways to deal with this, although it doesn't reduce the amount of attacks, one of the ways to deal with this is within your Globalprotect configuration. So if we come to here, and we look at my authentication here, my authentication here is I've got any OS, yep. Authentication method is Cloud Identity Engine. That actually backs off to Okta. And then I've got portal login cert there. So what I need in my authentication, if I just click into this, is I need the client identity engine and client certificate. Now that is only valid, it's there by default actually. So when you first come into this screen, you'll see this, and that's selected by default. But it needs the certificate profile to be created and put in here for that then to be enforced. Okay, so it's either and certificate or certificate. So if it was or certificate, it would look for the certificate if the certificate profile is defined here, but it doesn't enforce it. That needs both. So that's one of the first ways they say to do it. So basically that now means that when we go back to my logs, and we see in my logs, see all these failures, the reason we see the client cert not present is because it's looking for that certificate. The chances of them having the certificate that I put in there are very, very slim. And just to give you an idea, the certificate I used, basically certificate profile has to verify the root certificate of any certificate that it sees. So it uses that to validate it, and I just generated that. It was a self-generated certificate on one of my lab firewalls, and I put that up there and says, right, okay, you need to look for this. Okay, so you're not reducing the attempts, you're reducing the ability, really, or the ease. You're making it much more difficult to get in. If, as a second view, the second way of doing it, if you have no use for clientless VPN, so you don't want to publish applications on a clientless VPN. So user goes to your portal and they see tiles, they click on that, takes them through to VPNs. You can also do, if we come back to here, in our authentication, you can create a fake IDP. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a login, and we're going to use a fake IDP, and that fake IDP then redirects to just a random address. Make sure it's not an address that's valid, otherwise you could end up in trouble. So what we're going to do is we're going to add authentication. We're going to call it SAML, okay? And what we have at the top is authenticate users from, and this is where are they coming from? They come from Android, any browser, or Chrome. We're going to select browser because that's where the brute force is going to come from. We're going to use the SAML authentication method, and then we're going to create a fake IDP in there, which we can create a new and then send them to a fake IDP. Then when people try and log on, we're going to do SAML or client cert, so whenever anybody logs on, they're going to get redirected to that fake IDP, and thus it will break the chain of them being able to brute force it. However, that said, what a lot of people are wanting to do is wanting to reduce the amount of attacks. So if we look to put the rules in, and we put the rules in here in the rule base, so we go to Prisma Access, put the rules in the rule base. Okay, so if we go to put them in here, we don't actually affect the portal login. It's because these are when people are already logged in. There is, in fact, a completely hidden, it's not a separate rule base, but it's a hidden rule base. There's a hidden rule base that you can access using certain terms, and that rule base will allow you to then block access to the portal. So if I just show you one of my documents that I wrote out, these are, hopefully I'm going to make these available on a Patreon or something at some point, so for notes for people to download, then we'll be able to see what those rules should be. Okay, so this is the document that I created. As I say, we'll get a Patreon going or something like that, so these things can be downloaded and so on, or part of the membership or something like that. We'll look into this later. Watch out for any kind of community posts. So it basically gives you the ways that are suggested for you to try and reduce this. But these are what we're going to look at specifically here. So what we're going to look at specifically here is block for mobile users Globalprotect deployments. The rule naming convention is mobile user EMBG source countries. And these are embargo rules. And what they tend to suggest when you look at source countries is they tend to suggest that you're looking at regions and that you're trying to block regions. Well, you can block regions with it. Just slightly controversial opinion for everybody that relies on geo-blocking is geo-blocking alone, in my opinion, is not strong enough. It relies on our would-be attackers not using a VPN, and it relies on them being really honest and coming from the country they're coming from. So if you block a country where you suspect there might be hacking activity, you're going to have to hope that they just fire up their laptop in the morning and just start their hacking activity from there. But it is a good start. However, one of the other things that can be put in here is EDLs, or you can just have an IP list. So you can just create your own IP or IP groups. You can do an EDL, and I would suggest that, as is I've put there in the example rule, which we'll make in a minute, we'll build the example rule and put it in the rule base. I would suggest that putting the Palo Alto EDLs in there would be a good idea. I would also suggest, because it's globally available, this portal, let's not forget that. So I would also suggest that you could use the log forwarding to Sentinel or to Splunk or something like that. That could be used so you could have logic from the Globalprotect where it's coming into browser, it's multiple usernames. You could use regex in order to pull out the logs that you wanted, and then you could take those source IPs and publishing them on a just a web browser or something like that, maybe an internal web browser, and then pull that EDL from Prisma Access. If you pull that EDL from Prisma Access, you would be able to effectively, proactively block source IPs for a period of time based on the fact that they're trying to break in to your network, which I would suggest is probably the best thing to do because of the way these people work. Okay, so that's the rule we're going to create. We're going to create the rule in a minute, and we are going to test it. Okay, so what we're going to do to test this and demonstrate this is I'm connected currently to the UK gateway. Seems a bit weird connecting through to my portal from inside my my Globalprotect, but it is what it is. It's the easiest way for me to control it, and I've got multiple gateways. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this, and then we're going to block it from a country, and then we're going to try and access it from there. So if I go to HTTPS mode. Okay, now it's asking me for the certificate. I'm just going to select the certificate that's on the box. And we see that we get to my Okta sign in because I'm using Okta. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put the rule into SCM. We're going to block the access from, say, the Netherlands, and then I'll try again from a Netherlands endpoint, a Netherlands point of presence. Okay, so let's do this rule real quick. So in order to do this, I'm going to use the copy and paste out of the document because it's going to be easier, but I'll also put the names, the rule naming convention in the description below. Okay, so we're gonna add a rule. It's going to be a security rule. Now it has to be a pre-rule, and the pre-rule has to be given a specific name, as we said. So we're going to copy and paste that in. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so that's going to be the rule in there. And then it says to stick a tag on it. Now the tag on it is going to make it a lot easier to find. Now I already have that tag put in because I've already tested this. Okay, so we're going to go from any zone to any zone. And the source addresses, we're going to select them. And we're going to put in a region. And we're going to use NL because that's going to be easier. But you could also do the Palo Alto addresses. You can do an EDL, anything you want to put in there, and then the destination is going to be any. And then we're going to drop this because you just want to drop it any, and we'll go with any because any drop rule should be the application any, but you don't want to leave an application default because then that leaves it open to people only attacking, say, SSL on 443. If they're attacking it on 929, for instance, or something like that, something random, then you're not going to see that because it's looking through an application default. And then we're going to make it none because we don't need anything because it's not going to get that far. Okay, so we're going to save that. Now, it saved it at the bottom here. What I want to do just to make sure that it's going to be hit and everything like that is I'm going to move it up to the top of the rule base, which, because it's in the Prisma Access pre-rules, means it's at the top of the pre-rules rule base, not the global rule base. So it's not actually at the top of the flattened rule base, but it's at the top of the Prisma Access rule base. So just to prove this as well, if we come back onto the desktop and we're going to change the gateway to Netherlands Central, we're going to connect to Netherlands Central, and then we're going to try and access the portal and show that it works. So it's on Netherlands Central now. So I'm going to go through. Going to type the and then the certificate again. Which certificate are we going to use? We can use a specific OID and put an OID within that certificate, and then we get the Okta thing. So we know that's working, okay? So now the plan is to go through, push that policy, and then we'll see if we can get there from Netherlands again. And if we can't, then that's all good, because that's what we was aiming for. And then we'll try again from the UK whilst we're on, just to make sure that we can still get to it from elsewhere. Okay, so now our rule's in, it's been pushed. So we'll just check onto the desktop and just see if we can still get to the portal from the Netherlands or the UK. Okay, so just to check, so we have a look and we see that we're still connected to the Netherlands. Go to Edge. Just put the old address in there. Okay, now try to get to it. We can't get to it. It's being dropped. Hasn't asked me for the certificate, so it's being dropped at the first level. Okay, so now if I go to UK, sorry, change gateway, come back to UK. Immediately we get the certificate check. And then I go, yep, that's the one I want to use. And then we get through. So we can see that does actually stop it. That puts it in there. So now that is actually controlling access to the portal. I would suggest that is something that you should really be doing anyway. And I would also put into the rules that you are going to use the EDLs and everything from Palo Alto as well. Plus, you could look at the whole login thing, and if you wanted to explicitly stop people with multiple failed logins from seeing the same address 5 times in the last 2 minutes or something like that, you could pass that to an EDL, and then you could use that in your policy. So just to go over our policy again, you can use that, and you can any zone to any zone. Yes, you could also do that to untrust if you wanted to, or untrust to untrust. You can make it an intra-zone policy. You don't need the profiles after it, because it's going to get dropped at that point, and you can now control what is now. You can also as well just say you can also negate that. So if you wanted, say, if you only had GB, for instance, you could put GB in there and then negate GB, so that it would actually block everything other than GB, and then the countries, which would probably be easier than trying to add all the countries in that you want to block it from. Okay, so that's the embargo rules. You know, once you're on a firewall and you've got the portal hosted on the firewall, it's a lot easier because that is hosted on the firewall. Whereas this, because you're using SCM, because there's a lot of background to it as well, it's just easy and nice to know that these rules exist, and you can access these rule bases by using these specific rule names, and put those rules in there and secure your portal. And just then, if we have a look at the logs as well, we can see in the logs that we're now blocking based on that, and we get a policy deny, and where we're going to with it. So hopefully that has helped. Please like and subscribe. As I said before, it really does help. And I will see you in the next video.